Dear student, welcome with us to our commercial subject group level 2 in account 111. We will cover today chapter 2, and it is about the accounting in action. Our learning objective for this lesson: at the end of this lesson, the student should be able to understand the accounting equation and the define of its component. Second, explain the type of assets, liability, and owner equity. Finally, analyze the effect of business transaction on the accounting equation. First of all, let us take a look and understand the accounting equation and define the component on it. We will start firstly with assets. What we mean by assets, my dear students? Assets are a company's resource with a future benefit, things company own or control. So all the resource the company, they have it and get benefit from it. Then what we mean by liability, my student? The liabilities are company obligation and amount that the company owns. Finally, what we mean by the owner equity? The owner equity is the property, rights, and claims of the business owner. By that, we know the component of the accounting equation. Now, my dear student, after we take a look about the component of the accounting equation, let us take an example for this component. Firstly, if I will discuss the assets, there is many examples for the assets, the resource of the company. First of it, cash, supplies, account receivable, and the furniture, premises, a track, and machinery. This is some examples of the assets. Moving to the second component of the accounting equation, which is the liability. And let us take an example for the liability. The liability will have the loans, account payable, note payable, interest payable, and mortgage payable. Finally, we will shift to the third part of the accounting equation, and it will be the owner's equity. And we have some examples for the owner equity, starting with the capitals, investment, revenues, expense, and it's end with the drawing. Take a look for this activity. Let us see which formula is the best formula or the right formula for the accounting equation. Try to guess, my dear students, the right equation. Now, let us see the right answer. The first equation is the right answer. The first equation is constant of the assets will be equal to the liability, and I will add with it the owner equity of the company to get the assets. Let us take an activity to have more experience with the account. I have it, and I will use it in the accounting equation. I have, dear student, here many accounts, and I should classify it as assets, liability, and owner equity. And when I mention the owner equity, I should specify if it revenue or expense. Please take a few minutes to take to take a look about the accounts. After taking a look, my dear student, to the different activity we have it. So let us start with the classification. Starting with the first account, I have the note receivable. The note receivable will be an asset. Moving to the fees income, and will be the revenue. And I know the revenue type of an owner equity. Office equipment, it will be an asset. The loan will be a liabilities. The track will be an asset. Insurance expense will be an expense, and as I know, it's a type in owner equity. Machinery, it's an asset. And then I have the account payable, and it's be a liability. Then the capital, I know it will be an owner equity. And finally, the drawing, it is also an owner equity. Moving to find the figures of the component in our accounting equation. In this schedule, I have my accounting equation, which is constant of assets equal liability plus the owner equity. Let us apply it here. Under the assets, I have many types of assets. In our example, I take an example of cash, equipment, and supplies. In the liability section, we took the account payable. And in owner equity, we take the capital. Let us take a look for the first example. If I have all the figures for all this account, but I need to find the liability in this example. How can I get the liability in this example? Applying the first equation, I should take the assets, and I have it. I have 10,000, 3,200, and 8,000. I should take the total of assets and subtract the owner equity from it, which is 8,000, and I will get the liability. This one for the first equation. On the second example, I have the assets, I have the cash, equipment, but I miss the supplies. And in the liability section, I have the liability figure, which is 15,000, and also I have the owner equity with 23,500. I need to get the assets. So, third, also I have the assets except the cash, and I have the liability and owner equity. After explaining the first one, can you guess, my dear student, how can we get the figure in the second and the third example? After you think, my dear student, about the missing figure, let us see how can we find the missing figure. As we say, for the first one, I take the total assets and I subtract the owner equity 8,000 from it, and I get the liability of 6,000. For the assets, I have the total of liability plus the owner equity, and it will be equal to assets. I should keep it equal. So the difference will be the number of the supplies. Also, if I shift for the third equation or third example, also I can apply the same equation. I take the total of liability plus the owner equity, and then getting the difference between it, and it will be the figure of the cash. Moving to other activity, my dear student, let us read the first one. If the liability is 20,000, this figure for the liability, and the owner will be 80,000 for the owner equity, then how much will be the assets? The second, if the owner equity is 6,000, this will be the owner equity, and the assets is 10,000. So how much will be the liability? Take a few minutes to think about it. After you finish thinking, my dear student, let us check our answer. For the first one, the liability is 20,000.